Just a few weeks ago, Iran was gripped by massive protests after the downing of a passenger jet. And joining us now to help catch us up on what's been going on since then and what might happen in Iran in the near future is Iranian-American journalist and media analyst Nagar Mortazavi. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So since the big protests that we talked about previously, I haven't seen too much reporting about what's been going on. If there's been any sort of continuing unrest, are people feeling reassured about that there won't be a repeat of the passenger jet being shot down? Can you catch us up a little bit on the domestic situation there?
Sure, so the grievances are certainly there. As we saw back in November, the massive protests, massive anti-government protests happening in almost 100 cities across Iran, and hundreds of people killed by security forces. That was wrapped up with the repression, but the grievances remained. And then we saw the next round of protests just a few weeks ago, as you said, in reaction and direct response to the downing of the civilian plane, and then the following cover up for 3 days when the government lied about it. But what we're hearing right now, so the protests from the street have been wrapped up again by security forces. But right now, the talk of Iranian politics is mostly the domestic rift between political factions, because we have a parliamentary election coming up in February. It's an important election that seems like the hardliners are trying to basically clean up house and create a more unified hardline parliamentary, get rid of the moderate and the reformist voices as much as they can, bring some fresh new blood, but still from the hardline camp. We've seen a big number of reformist candidates being disqualified to run by the Guardian Council, who is also controlled by the hardliners. So it seems like the upcoming parliamentary elections in February is going to be the next game changer, and then followed by the presidential election the year after.
So I want to ask you a little bit about those disqualifications. I know that this is not the first time it's happened, but it seems like a lot of candidates being disqualified, dozens and dozens of actual current lawmakers being disqualified. How significant is that, and should we expect that there will be any unrest either in the wake of the election or in particular if it seems like it was not a fair process?
Well, it definitely seems like it wasn't a rare process. It's basically using the disqualification to get rid of your domestic rivals is what the hardliners are doing. And some of the reformist and more moderate forces that have been disqualified are just longtime politicians who've been in the game. And it just comes as a very big surprise that the hardliners took this very bold step to disqualify them from running. Let's also remember that some of the moderate and reformist forces, these are considered domestic opposition to the hardliners, some of them actually refrained from running. So a smaller number boycotted the election in light of the recent events of the repression of protesters and all that. So the combination of all of this, just to give you the big picture, the combination of all of this is that we're going to see a more weakened moderate/reformist force. These are the forces who want more engagement with the West, who want better relations, more trade, more opening, potential diplomacy with the US, with Europe. And we're going to see a more strengthened hardline camp. We already see the IRGC becoming stronger thanks to President Trump's policies in the region. And now we're going to see that basically being mirrored in a way in the parliament through the elections, and then possibly at the presidential election the next year.
And I know that this is speculation at this point, but if that's the government that's going to exist, what do you think the people will think about that? I mean, there's been these massive waves of protest. Is that the sort of thing that could trigger more like some sort of popular uprising?
Well, it could, because as I said, the grievances are there. But then at the same time, when the hardliners have the upper hand and they keep getting stronger and they isolate the moderates and the reformists, that means we're going to see more repression. So it doesn't mean that more protests are going to lead to meaningful change, more towards democracy or freedom. It's probably going to mean that we're going to see a more closed political space. We're going to see more state repression. And with the threat that's coming from the outside, President Trump's assassination of the top general, Qasem Soleimani, was seen as an act of war by the Iranians, a major escalation. All of that is also affecting the domestic politics. And now any criticism of the hardliners, criticism of the IRGC, of the Quds force that was run by Qasem Soleimani, of Iran's regional activities is going to be seen basically with more scrutiny, considered treason. And there's already hardline pundits calling on domestic critics, calling them basically rented mouthpieces for Trump and Netanyahu. So we're going to see for sure a more closing of the political states, and that's just not good news for the factions that want better change and also for the population.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.